Very excited today. We are joined by Alex Goldberg. Alex, welcome on board.
Hey, thanks so much. Nice to be here.
You were featured on Starter Story, the YouTube channel.
Alex's website made $0 for months until one day he uncovered something about the Google algorithm that changed everything.
It did a nice job, but we got more time than they do. Why don't you take to when this site got started, if you could?
I started in 2018, again, as a side hustle. I was working in a fintech company at the time. So once we started to rank well in Google, we just doubled down, tripled down on that.
But what are the big things that someone like that needs to look out for as they perhaps transition into a paid media approach?
You don't want to just say, well, I don't know, let's just spend the money and see what happens. You want to have a really high degree of confidence before you get to that point.
Maybe you can give us some time frames, some revenue.
6 months into the strategy, we're printing like 20K plus a month in profit, something like 60K in revenue.
What kind of traffic and revenue was the business generating when you sold it?
Organic traffic, I think, was probably in the 30,000 a month kind of range, 50,000 a month. Small number, but highly lucrative. And then on the revenue side, we were at a little over $1 million run rate.
From a high level, any tips you can give, any thoughts you can share for people so they don't end up in a quagmire when it comes to all that conversion tracking that you have to do in at least a CPA model?
Yeah, absolutely. So couple tips and tricks here to think about. The first is that...
All right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman. Very excited today. We are joined by Alex Goldberg. Alex, welcome on board.
Hey, thanks so much. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you on the podcast. I'm very excited because we're talking about a success story from start to finish to some degree. We always love when we get these because we just get to hear about the origin all the way to where you took it and where it is now. As we do, before we get into the nuts and the bolts of this story today, maybe give us some background on yourself and who you are up until the point where this project began.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm Alex. I'm based in Southern California. I moved to the Bay Area for college and took my first few jobs up there working in SaaS companies, early stage startups, typically as marketing hire number one, and gained a lot of, cut my teeth in different organizations, learning paid, organic, offline, online, a bunch of different kinds of marketing. But always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, always knew that I wanted to run my own business one day. Both of my parents were entrepreneurs. And so I started side hustling essentially on nights and weekends. The affiliate world, the niche site world, the building online and creating your own empire and your own destiny was really attractive. So yeah, just started to tinker nights and weekends. I'd work until 5 or 6 p.m., slam my laptop shut, go and have dinner with my now wife and potentially go for a run, and then hop back on my computer and hustle until the wee hours of the morning and did it all for a few years. And one of the things that took off in that period was a health and wellness focused affiliate site. We helped folks understand their options online as well as review and compare different, for the most part, telemedicine products, but really a wide range of health and wellness products and a lot of innovation in that space. We helped folks navigate that and had a lot of organic traffic. And at some point, my side hustle became my full-time hustle, went full-time at the business. I bought my business partner out. I then at some point figured out a paid media strategy to complement the organic traffic and diversify the business a bit. And was lucky enough to exit the business in March of this year for an attractive multiple, and I wouldn't say life-changing money, but definitely a solid exit. So that's my story, kind of at a high level, and happy to dive in anywhere that's helpful.
Do you ever get stuck in your business and wish you had someone you could turn to for solutions? Well, I think you should consider joining the Niche Pursuits community. You'll get weekly calls with experts on growing a successful online business, and you'll also get assigned a small mastermind group where you can solve your business problems as well as share your wins. For a limited time, I'll let you try out the Niche Pursuits community for just $1. Go ahead and use coupon code PODCAST at checkout in order to get your first month for just $1. Again, that's coupon code PODCAST. Go to community.nichepursuits.com today and see what it's all about. And maybe I'll see you on our call next week. Thanks a lot.
Well, we definitely want to get into the nuts and bolts if you don't mind. I mean, I think I first caught wind of this through a mutual friend, and you were featured on Starter Story, the YouTube channel, and you know, it did a nice job, but we got more time than they do, so we can really get into some more details, I hope. Why don't you take us back to when the site got started, if you could? Maybe give us a little bit of overview. You told us health and wellness, maybe a little bit more, if you could, details on it. Tell us about the exit, whatever you're comfortable sharing, and then we'll get into kind of, you know, the details of how you got it going. That always gives people some good perspective on the timeframes, and just kind of where you landed on the exit.
For sure. Yeah, so to put some more meat on the bones there, I started in 2018, again, as a side hustle. I was working in a fintech company at the time. So the initial idea was just, hey, if I'm doing this for my day job, why don't I start writing about it on the side too? I'm going to be doing all this research anyway. So comparing fintech companies is where I started. I started with a partner, somebody that I was working with at the time at that fintech company. And we started to see a little bit of traction with our inorganic Google. We wrote all the first articles ourselves, built the WordPress site ourselves, spent $0. Really a kind of a scrappy start. And the initial impetus was like, hey, can we just make some side money for beer on the weekends, right? It wasn't like, hey, let's, replace our income and build a long-lasting business that's going to IPO or be sold one day. Just really, fun project to stay in touch and work together. And we started to, we pivoted at some point relatively early on because we saw large Series A's, large venture capital rounds going to health and wellness companies that really seemed crazy to us at the time. Now it's pretty standard for $100 million Series A's to go to fast-growing companies. But at the time in 2018, that was pretty eye-watering sum. And so we thought to ourselves, well, these are really considered purchases. These are if I'm going to buy some sort of RX wellness product, something that requires a lot of research to know if it's going to work for me, how do I do that alone if it's happening online? I probably need more information and more guidance. So that's where we pivoted to, away from fintech into health and wellness. As I mentioned, there's quite a few different conditions that we focused on, but for the most part, RX. So for the most part, something that you would normally go to a doctor to get, but then, before the pandemic and then definitely during the pandemic, this acceleration of folks getting these products online and needing help making those decisions. So right place, right time. And once we found a little bit of traction, so once we started to rank well in Google and start to understand, this traffic is really valuable, both to the brands and the content itself is quite useful to the users. We just doubled down, tripled down on that. So probably about 2021 is when it was too hard for me to pay attention in my meetings at work. There was just too much money flowing in and too much activity with partners and brands to really care a lot about the meetings that I was in. So I decided to go full time at it. My partner at the time did not want to go full time, didn't want to kind of forego what he was working on 9 to 5. And so that was fine. And we had that arrangement for about a year. And then at some point the numbers continued to grow. It was as I mentioned, just good timing, good right place, right time. And so I decided to buy out my business partner. And so ran the company by myself, or with my small team, I should say, for about a year and a half. And we expanded the portfolio as well beyond just one site. So our strategy was, we have all these partners, potentially we can serve these partners with multiple sites and multiple kinds of media. So organic traffic, newsletters, social media, or I should say social posts. All of that was going on. But I also felt that, hey, all of these are more or less tied to some sort of organic algorithm. And for the most part, very top heavy, very reliant on Google. And so this is when I really started to tinker on the paid media side and figure out like, hey, how can I double down on the keywords that are already working without being reliant on an organic algorithm? So that's kind of up until, I guess I haven't completed the full story yet. So that's, up until say 2022. And this is really when I started to step on the gas, figure out what worked from a paid media arbitrage perspective. And all of a sudden, the business was not so reliant on organic anymore. I'd say it was like sort of 50-50. And it was very eye-opening to me. Hey, maybe I should have started here, to be honest with you. I mean, they're both great, but great to have sort of two legs to stand on and a more diversified base of revenue and earnings. And so with that in mind, I was kind of getting tired of running this business, getting the itch to start something new and go from 0 to 1 again. And so I thought, hey, this would be a good time to sell the business. I went and talked to a few friends who had successfully done that in the past, and they all pointed me towards one brokerage. I know that there's different ways to go and court buyers. Strategic buyers are always best, but it's a more ambiguous timeline. And I wanted to, really push it out on the market and see what the response was. And yeah, there was actually quite a bit of interest in the site, despite being kind of a high interest rate market where, financing was more difficult, as well as just the helpful content update and a lot of changes in SEO. So it was a relatively difficult time to sell the business, I would say, or not the best market for it, but still tons of interest. And I'll have different theories about why that is overall, but was lucky to find a great buyer and transition ownership in March of this year. So it was a long process. It took about 4 or 5 months. It was SBA financed. Lots more details can share about the actual sale itself.
Well, let's get into unpacking things. I mean, you talked about how SEO was a bit of a flagship for traffic all the way up until 2022. So that would have put it at like 4 or 5 years. You grew on the back of SEO, and then you switched into more paid media, arbitrage, that sort of stuff. Can you maybe get into the details about that transition? And I really do want to camp, if we can, more on the paid arbitrage side of things, the paid media side of things, because certainly for a lot of people, the HCU has hurt Google traffic. And we have a lot of podcast episodes on how to grow SEO traffic, but we don't have a lot in the paid arbitrage side of things. I mean, what did that transition look like? How did you go about starting that off?
For sure. So I have to just give the caveat that I feel quite comfortable with paid media because of my background as a growth marketer. So I think that was a nice advantage. And, a lot of people who are looking at this from scratch and wondering if this is the right strategy for them may not feel as comfortable, with their hands on the keyboards of, an SEM campaign or a Facebook campaign or whatever. So that said, it's very much not rocket science. And if you have good marketing chops already, and you're already driving traffic and you already have partners, this is relatively easy to figure out. So just within my journey, I think the impetus was, as I mentioned, really trying to understand how to diversify my business, feeling like things are going really well and this is great, but it could end tomorrow, and feeling like every single day is a blessing to be alive. And in fact, it took me, that explains why it took me so long to go from side hustle to full time, because the whole time I was thinking this could end tomorrow, and then I'd have to go back to my day job, and I might as well just keep my day job because who knows how long this is going to last. So that's kind of the mentality of just early stage bootstrapper in general. But in seeking this diversity for earnings and revenue, my first thought was really, hey, I know what works from a keyword perspective right now on organic. What happens if I bid on those exact same keywords from a paid perspective? So I already know how that they perform well for my partners. I already know the more or less like the click-through rate, the conversion rate, the commission rate. I can calculate an estimated earnings per click. And it's pretty hard to rank for these keywords. More and more competition comes in, algorithm updates come and wreak havoc. But what if you just buy the traffic for the keyword because you understand the economics of it you understand the throughput of that keyword from an organic perspective? I don't know, how different could it be if you just buy traffic to that keyword? So that was the impetus. I was kind of felt like I had to diversify. One way to diversify that is a sound strategy is to own your audience. So to build a following, or email following, own a social following. All of that seemed way harder to me than simply buying the traffic and sending it to a landing page and seeing what happened. So that was really the impetus there. And then it took a good amount of time of testing and pioneering and tweaking and trying to figure out how this actually works, and what the best landing page experience is, and where there's enough confidence to go and buy the traffic, even though there's a lot of competition. And how do you de-risk these tests in a way such that you don't lose your shirt on when you don't watch the numbers for 2 days. And there's quite a bit of, say, conversion tracking is just a really technical process, because these conversions aren't happening on your site. They're happening on a third-party site. And so how do you pump that data back into your ad platform such that, the bidding algorithm can really get going, and the AI machine learning with it underlying those algorithms can really go to work for you and find the right prospects at the right cost, kind of thing. So all of that is a technical challenge. Getting your partners on board is another huge area. Most brands aren't interested in you bidding on their keywords and driving up the cost of their own pay-per-click. There's quite a bit of fraud in that category as well. So I think, all of these, there's different challenges when it comes to setting up a paid arbitrage strategy. But once you figure out the roadmap, it is in many ways easier than building and growing and keeping engaged and known audience, I think.
Let me ask you a little bit more detail on what types of keywords you're bidding on, just to kind of round that out. And then what types of ads were these? Are these Google ads? Are these social media ads? Are they a collection of ads?
Yeah. So the kind of keywords that we bid on typically are shopping comparison type keywords. So you can start with really high funnel stuff, but understanding that by nature of them being high in the funnel, that means that people aren't quite ready to buy. So your likely expected earnings per click on a keyword like that is probably going to be lower. Now, the cost for that keyword may be lower too. So you might be able to stomach a little bit less conversion. But where I recommend starting is kind of where I started, which is, hey, I have these high intent comparison shopping type keywords, best of, X versus Y, is this thing legit? Some sort of brand alternative. These kind of query patterns generally indicate that somebody is shopping and they have a certain level of brand awareness in many cases, and they're getting ready to make a decision. They need some help, but they're getting ready to make a decision. So that's where I would start. If those keywords don't work, it's unlikely that the higher in the funnel ones are going to work, is really the way I think about it. So start low and move your way up as you'd like to scale. And then the kind of ads. So on SEM, they're just, for the most part, text-based ads. You want to match the secret sauce really is you want to match the query that someone's typing in to the keyword that you're bidding on, to the text in the ad, to the landing page copy. And if you're able to connect those dots and match the intent of the underlying query, meet the demand of the underlying query, then you've served that user quite well, and you'll likely get conversions as a result. So that's where I would start with the keywords. That's kind of what the ads look like. We did do some of this on Meta as well. On Meta, there's something called social whitelisting, which actually makes all of this way easier. The strategy is basically you give your partners access to run ads through their own ad manager. So you as the affiliate don't even really manage the ads or impact the ads much. We really just say, hey, brand partner, you have all the control over this campaign. And kind of like leverage my third-party handle and, send traffic to my site or send traffic to my landing page. But all the ad spend, all the targeting, all the creative comes from your partner, the brand itself. So in many ways on Meta, it's easier. You can do the same strategy or the same setup as you have on Google SEM, which is to say, you as the affiliate can just buy traffic and send that to your own landing page yourself without giving your partner or your brand control over all of that. So you can do it both ways, but in many ways, the Meta properties make it easier, sort of more streamlined for this kind of activity. And again, both of these strategies, the beauty of them is that they're super duper aligned with the incentives of the platform itself. So you're not at odds with the platform, the ad platform. They make money. They are profit-seeking organizations. You're paying them, so you're aligned with them. Whereas in an organic, if you're relying on an organic algorithm, you are always a little bit at risk. I think there were the days when all of us deluded ourselves a little bit as publishers and said, "Oh, Google desperately needs us because we're the ones who create the content." But in the context of generative AI, that may not be the case anymore, at least to the same extent. And so basically trying to align your incentives with the platforms is the way to future-proof or like ensure that your business isn't going to get cut down tomorrow.
You talked about having experience in paid media, kind of going into this pivot, and a lot of people might not. What are the big mistakes or things to look out for? Someone thinking to themselves right now, okay, I can boot up Google Search Console. I can find the kind of keywords that I get traffic for. I can, to some degree, look and see which ones of those are conversion focused and which ones I might be getting my highest earnings from. But what are the big things that someone like that needs to look out for as they perhaps transition into a paid media approach?
Yeah, I think a couple things. So on the one hand, you want to have really high degree of confidence before you spend your first dollar. You want to de-risk things as much as possible. You don't want to just say, well, I don't know, let's just spend the money and see what happens. You want to have a really high degree of confidence before you get to that point. And how do you do that? So on the one hand, it helps if you already know the throughput or the conversion rate, essentially. And so therefore you can estimate a very concrete expected earnings per click. And then, you can use Google Keyword Planner or whatever platform you're using to see what the cost of traffic to that keyword or to that user will be. And if there's enough margin there, I wouldn't say you don't want it to be 1 cent more. You want it to be some degree higher, so that you have a little bit of room to play with because, right, things go awry, unexpected behavior, small sample size, lots of reasons why these numbers your plan may not pan out exactly as you'd hoped. So you want there to be a significant margin there, maybe 20%, something like that. And then once you map that out, I would say you want to get your partners on board because even if the math works out, if your partner says, if the brand you're working with says, hey, you can't do this, or hey, I'm going to change your rate, all of a sudden that this strategy can be kaput. So you want to get your partners on board. Specifically, you'd be surprised how many partners will even fund this strategy. Will pay for the ads itself just to test, just to allow you to see if this works. And I know that sounds crazy, but basically the pitch is, hey, I don't know for sure this is going to work, but for $3,000 to $5,000 in the first month, we can test together to see if there's a scalable, evergreen channel for conversions. And we can be your partner to help you stand out versus your competitors. We can be your partner to help shoppers when they're really confused, whether it's you or another brand or generally which one to go to. We can help you stand out. And it's true, we may be bidding on some of the same keywords, but generally in our experience, that doesn't impact the cost of ads enough to outweigh the benefits that you get. If you're worried about that, we can just test it for 30 days. We'll see how much you spent. We'll see how many conversions you got. And we'll see, if the cost per acquisition went up during that period. And you'd be surprised. A lot of brands will be open to this and allow you to test into it. And so that's great. You now haven't risked a single of your own dollars. You've only risked your brand partner's dollars. And at the end of that month period, you can switch to a CPA or some other partnership model that works well for both sides. And at that point, the brand is really happy because they know exactly what they're getting and they know exactly what they're paying for. And it's up to you as the hired hand, the affiliate, to grow in different ways. So yeah, that's just kind of how some of the big challenges in getting this off the ground, even before you spend your first dollar. The setting up of the campaigns has its own nuance and quirks, but for the most part is kind of the easiest part in many ways. Really, it's this pre-work of building your own confidence and conviction around the keywords, doing the math to make sure that that's a plausible plan that could actually work and that there's enough margin there, and then getting your partners on board to in a structured way, potentially even fund some of this ad spend or to de-risk it enough to, again, keep your confidence high enough that it's a worthwhile test. But those are, some of the bigger challenges that the pre-work is what I call it. Like even before you hop into the campaign or measure the performance on a granular basis, you really want to have a high degree of conviction. So starting where you already know there's commission on the other side is one way. It's a way that I recommend you do that.
If you look back at the ads, or if you look from a high level, once this was up and running, how many of the ads and the paid media that you were starting did you end up continuing? Like, is this a game of attrition where you're constantly testing and maybe, 20% of the ads end up accounting for 80 or 90% of your revenue? Or is this something where, because of your measured approach, you're really able to dial it in, and the majority of what you're launching, partnering, and testing ends up being something that's viable and profitable?
Great question. So I think in my own experience, probably 60 or 70% of these campaigns end up being successful, so profitable to some degree. So you do have a solid chunk of these that you test for about a month, either with your own dollars or the brand's dollars, and you determine, hey, we're a little bit too far away from profitability or efficiency. This just isn't going to work. Cut your losses. You move on to other strategies. So to be clear, it does not work in every industry. It does not work in every niche. There needs to be relatively high lifetime value, therefore relatively high margin, therefore relatively high willingness to pay, for that customer. And then on the other side, there needs to be relatively low competition. I've made this work in like really, really competitive spaces like hair loss and ED. I've made this work in less competitive spaces where the lifetime value, the commission rate is lower, but the competition is lower. So it just, kind of depends. It's a seesaw that you have to make work. But to your point, like of those, say 60% of campaigns that do work, or do find profitability, there's not a lot of tweaking to them. They're pretty evergreen. It depends on the niche. It depends on, is there seasonality in that niche? It depends on the emergence of new players and the overall kind of market firmness, a lot of different things, right? But generally speaking, there's like a landing page that you create, there's a campaign that you create, and there's not a lot of changes that happen to either of those assets. And by contrast, let's think about organic traffic for a second, right? You do create the content once, and you do benefit hopefully from that with lots of organic traffic, and you don't have to pay for anything. It's true, you don't have to risk your dollars except for what you spent creating that content. But almost certainly, I would say 100% certainly, there will be a bigger publisher that will come in and eat your lunch, regardless. If it's a lucrative opportunity, somebody else will recognize that. The Jeff Bezos line, your margin is my opportunity. Like that will for sure happen in SEO. And that's not to say that there won't be competition in SEM or say, bidding for the same eyeballs on Meta. Competition does creep in and it does eat away your margin there as well. But there is an auction system. And again, you're aligning your incentives with Google's or with Facebook's. And if you pay them, they understand, you need to be in front of the right user at the right time. Otherwise, you'll churn as a customer to them. So there's a little bit more of an incentive for Google and for these platforms to spread the love, so to speak, if you're paying them in a way that for organic, it's a little bit more zero sum. You're either in the top 3 or you're not. And there's no shuffling of that top 3. So, or very often anyway, as often as like the paid side is shuffled. So yeah, that's a little bit of the difference there. And to your point, like it does require some maintenance, but it's not, I would say it's a much less maintenance than the organic content creation side.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. So you probably know the importance of building internal links so your site can perform well in Google. Today I want to share how Link Whisper can help you add outbound internal links to your articles. As you draft your article in WordPress, Link Whisper scans your site, identifying the best internal link opportunities. It then recommends the perfect anchor text and link to add. With just a click, your content is updated with new internal links. No more expensive tools or tedious manual site searches. Link Whisper does the heavy lifting right inside the WordPress editor. Say goodbye to the hassle of internal linking. With Link Whisper, you can focus on what you do best, creating great content. Use the coupon code podcast today and get $15 off. Elevate your website's internal linking with Link Whisper now. Building smart internal links just got easier. Go to linkwhisper.com today and be sure to use coupon code podcast to get $15 off.
You clearly have a pretty, intricate is probably not the right word, but you have a relationship with these brands that you have and that you're promoting through these ads. Is this because a lot of people listening maybe will just have affiliate products that they have an affiliate relationship with? Did you go further than that? And what's your relationship like in terms of getting that dialed in before you start running a paid media campaign? Do you need to, or could you just go to skim links and you got some affiliate products in your industry and you start running ads and make it viable that way? How important is a relationship, if at all?
Yeah, great question. So definitely you can just go and do this. You might want to read the terms of without an established relationship or without working directly with the brand in a non-anonymous way. You can go do that. I would probably read the terms of service of each affiliate partnership that you have, because a lot of them will say explicitly, do not do paid search, do not do TM plus bidding, trademark plus bidding. Right. There are definitely folks who explicitly forbid you from doing this. And so in those cases, if they're a really good partner of yours, or, if you want to keep this above board from the get-go, which I recommend, it makes sense to talk with them, explain to them what the value of this is, overcome their objections, mention how, you could sort of crawl before you walk, before you run, in different ways to sort of, push that relationship into a place where you're having pretty, intricate conversations or what have you around how to work in tandem and work closely together. But theoretically, you can also just do this and ask for forgiveness. And, you let's say the consequences of that are you either get slapped down or you get pushed out of the program. So if it's a partner that you're not really close to, or you don't really, there's a lot of them in the market that you can go and kind of replace, then that might be a viable strategy for you. But I do think that to really eke out a lot of dollars from this, or to scale it up, it makes sense to hug your best partners with both hands, so to speak, and really understand what their needs are, and then cater your paid media plan towards their needs. And what I mean by that is, it may seem obvious, every brand needs the same thing. It's actually not true. Different brands have different initiatives at different priorities at different times. I worked with every brand wants growth, of course. Every brand wants more customers for a lower cost. Okay, so if you're able to create that kind of alchemy, then that's great. But not everyone has the Midas touch at every point, or, there are different initiatives at different times. So, for instance, brands may just feel that they don't rank well for their review churn, or maybe they have horrible press around their review churn. They've gotten a bunch of bad press. And so, regardless of what the cost per acquisition is, regardless of what the actual efficiency throughput is there, they want to spend money in that category. That's an example. There's other brands I've worked with that they have spend caps, that Facebook or Meta is limiting how much money that they can spend on ads in a given day. That's just a feature of Facebook or Meta. And so, if you know that your next dollar is profitable, but the platform won't let you spend more money, then maybe you seek a partner out like me, or like a third party, to help you run ads as well, to overcome those spend caps. So basically my point is that there's a lot of things you can learn from talking to your partners and just asking them the question, like, what are your top initiatives? What's your goal this quarter? How can I help you achieve that? Like, I'm a nimble marketer. I'm not just like a one-trick pony. I'm not just a publisher. I'm here to serve you. You're my customer, basically. And if you do embrace that relationship, then you get you learn what their needs are, and then you can serve them more, and basically you stand out. Not very many affiliates are doing that.
You mentioned a while back social whitelisting on Meta. Now, you might have just mentioned that offhand, and we don't need to spend any time on it. Or is there something to unpack there that people can learn more about?
I think it's a great way to diversify your traffic away from organic with your existing partners. And in many ways, for people who don't run ads, it's the way to go. Or for folks who don't feel comfortable running ads themselves, because what you're doing is you're essentially giving access to your partners, to your brand partners, who are already assuredly running ads on Meta. I mean, they're likely spending way more than you think every month, and they're already doing that. And therefore, they're hungry for more creatives. They're hungry for more ways to convert, because this is a supply-based platform, which means there's a theoretically infinite amount of demand. There's always more eyeballs you could serve the ads to. The question is, do you have more creatives? Have you exhausted your creatives? Have you shown too many ads to too many people? Too much density of your ads, basically. And so, these brands are hungry for new things to test on Meta at any given point. And so you can say, hey, like, I have a new thing for you to test. You can leverage my handle using social whitelisting, and you can see how that works for you. And so it's very hands off from the perspective of the affiliate or the publisher. And so it's a great way to get started in this paid media strategy, to dip your toe in without having to manage ads, without having to watch the spend and risk really anything on your side. Of course, the other beautiful thing is that the ad spend is coming out of your partner's account, off of your partner's credit card, and therefore you're risking absolutely nothing. So yeah, it's probably the way to start in this category if you already have great affiliate partners, brand partners, and you have and you want to diversify away from an organic algorithm. Social whitelisting is a great first foray, and there's many different ways to charge for it. I think, just again, like embracing your partner's needs and listening to them and understanding what their goals are. But you can sort of, I've had people pay just monthly a flat fee for access to this. I've had there be a really high CPA on the back. So like a flat fee without CPA. I've had there be really high CPA, no flat fee. I've had there be a hybrid of the two. I've had ad spend plus a certain percentage. It just depends on the nature of, where the budget's coming from and what your partner needs and how they feel comfortable paying essentially for this or testing into this. But that's really the synopsis on social whitelisting. I think it's a really great strategy that unfortunately not enough publishers know about, but is really common. Once you see it out there on your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed, you're like, oh yeah, I see this all the time. And
Right.
hey, maybe as a publisher, I should be doing this too.
Fascinating. Okay. I can only imagine how messy the conversion tracking would end up being in a model like this. From a high level, any tips you can give, any thoughts you can share for people so they don't end up in a quagmire when it comes to all that conversion tracking that you have to do in at least a CPA model?
Yeah, absolutely. So couple tips and tricks here to think about. The first is that you don't need it to start. So to launch your campaigns, it would probably be ideal to start with a max click kind of situation, potentially max conversion bidding strategy. If you have conversion, and you can implement conversions as just a click from your site to your partner's site. So like an affiliate click, and you can optimize the spend just towards those affiliate clicks. So that would be probably the way to start. And that's relatively simple to do. But if you're trying to pass back dynamic conversion values back into Google or Facebook, meaning not just, hey, did this conversion happen? And was this conversion meaningful? Like, was this conversion a commissionable event, some sort of event that I made money on? But you're also trying to pass back the actual commission that you made from that, such that you can then allow Google's algorithms or Facebook's algorithms to target not just a max number of conversions, but a max an ROI, like a level of margin that you want to target. That is a huge unlock as you try and scale. So after you prove out the model is basically break even or slightly profitable, then you want to go dive into this very complicated conversion tracking, messy world of figuring out how to pass back the GCLID, Google Click ID, or Facebook Click ID, FB CLID, back into these platforms. Before that, I'd say it's overkill. Like don't waste time over engineering this. And then some things that you'll need. There's some requirements that are necessary in order to pull this off. The first is that it maybe goes without saying, but your partners need to have conversions in a digital source of truth. I know that sounds crazy to think about, but
It does.
Hey, there are some partners I work with that like they are the ones to report the numbers. I don't have access to numbers. They share a screenshot, or they they don't have an affiliate platform that they use. They just like go into their own analytics and tell me what that is. So basically you need like a third party. You need access to a third party source of analytics. So that could be an affiliate platform, share a sale, affiliate window, Partnerize, Everflow, whatever it may be, something like that. It can also be internal, so it can be on their site as long as you have access to like their API or something. But you're realistically, to scale this up, you're going to need your partners to have a digital record that you can access, hopefully via an API, of those conversions in more or less in real time. So it can't just be like at the end of the month you get this number. No, you need this number every single day. And you need to be able to access this number every day in an automated way. And so for the most part, this is not a gating. This is not a prohibitive item. Like the vast majority of brands are working on an affiliate platform, so that's great. And then secondarily, it's all getting aggregated into this warehouse or this like source of truth, you could say. And there's a couple of scripts that you need to write. There's really just two. So you need access to a web developer, very junior web developer. This is not complicated. Probably a web developer can do this in less than a day, like really, really simple scripts. But there's two of them. One is you need to store this Google Click or Facebook Click ID when it loads onto your landing page, and you need to append it to each of the links on your landing page. So if you just have one link on your landing page, that's easy. You append it to the one link. If you have 5 links on your landing page, like 5 different partners that you're driving traffic to, and each of them is on a different platform, a different affiliate platform, then you need to append that Gclit or that Facebook Click ID to each link in a very specific way for each affiliate network, right? There's a different syntax to get that into some field or some special field, essentially. So that's the messiness of it. There's 2 scripts. So sorry, I just described one script, which is how you append the value to the link on the page, and then get that to be passed through into the affiliate platform. And then you need a second script that once per day queries each one of those affiliate platforms. It could also be your aggregator across those platforms. So I use something called Trackonomics. It's an aggregator for all of the networks. So I get all of the network's data into one place, and therefore I can just query this one API and get all the data. There's other tools that do this. There's Lasso. There's something called We Can Track or You Can Track. I can't remember. There's different tools that enable this aggregation across platforms, and that's wonderful to have if you have it implemented. It's not necessary. As I mentioned, you can query different APIs. But the second script, as I mentioned, that I mentioned is basically to query the API of your source of truth, either your aggregated source or multiple sources, and put that conversion data. So it's basically like the Gclit or the Facebook ID, the value of that conversion. So like how much money did you make from it, a timestamp, that kind of metadata. You put it queries the APIs, it puts them into a Google Sheet, and then from the Google Sheet, it gets uploaded into Google, or a Google Sheet, it gets uploaded into Facebook. That's the full journey of the data. It is messy. It's hard to set up, as you sort of pointed out or intuited. There's different platforms, and therefore it gets messy in how you get the data into those separate platforms, and from those separate platforms into an aggregated source, or from the aggregated source into a Google Sheet, and then back into Google or Facebook. So there's a very long, circuitous journey. It needs to be more or less real time. Another gating item, so to speak, is that you need, in order to really enable this, and in order for this to be meaningful for your bidding strategy, you need to get about 30 conversions a month. So if you're driving less than 30 conversions a month, so you're referring traffic to pool tables, selling pool tables online. It's gonna be hard to sell 30 pool tables in a month, right? So don't set up the conversion tracking. Don't wade into this cesspool of mess if you're not driving a significant number of conversions or conversion volume, because it's not going to impact the algorithmic bidding anyway. You need a certain number of signals. So yeah, anyway, that may have been too much detail. I'm not sure, but it does get messy. I think the thing to remember is you don't need to set that up to start. Really, to prove this out, you just start with a more simple bidding strategy that doesn't require any of this. But when you want to scale it up, this is a huge unlock, and it really helps Google funnel your ad dollars to the right users.
No, I appreciate it. It does sound messy, but it does sound intuitive, right? So I do think that that is something that came out of it is a little bit messy. Definitely got to roll your sleeves up. Definitely got to lock yourself in a dark room and not come out until you have it figured out. And again, just from a high level, so everyone kind of understands, and I'll verbally process this out loud. This is so that Google, Meta, and your advertising platforms learns not just who to send traffic to, but who is actually converting, and which users that they are serving the ads to actually end up in conversions. And you're actually, through that process, not just tying the clicks that go from the ad over to the platform, but you're actually tying who buys. And then Google, Meta, and other platforms are using that data to constantly refine the target audience, therefore making your ad perform better and better and better over time.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Basically, you want to give Google or the advertising platform some sort of success metric that is as representative as your real success metric as possible.
Right.
So when you start, you may be just saying, okay, it's good enough just to get traffic to my affiliate partners, because that's something that's easy for me to set up. I'm going to optimize all traffic to my affiliate partners. But that's ultimately not where you get paid. Where you get paid is when somebody buys, someone converts, someone takes a meaningful, commissionable action, which is not on your site. And that's why this is complicated, is because all of this is happening not on your site. And then one other bit of nuance I just want to add to what you said is that you're not just measuring when somebody takes a commissionable event. You're actually giving Google that success signal plus the value, the actual number value to your business. And so if you have different commission events, so let's just say you have a top 5 landing page that you're driving traffic to, your top partner pays X number of dollars, your second partner pays less, and your third partner pays even less. You're telling Google to say like, yeah, give credit to each of those conversions, but give them in proportion to what it actually is valued into my business. And that is the granularity that really starts to scale things, right? You're giving Google, you're opening the kimono to Google and you're saying, this is everything you need to know. Let your big brain algorithms go, get after it. And that's a major unlock.
Gonna save this clip right here for any time I get a reference in the future from someone that we don't get detailed enough here on the Niche Pursuits podcast. Just send me this clip. Like, oh yeah? Well, we just got in the weeds.
Oh, gosh.
Good clarity, good granularity, and I'm sure this stuff really matters when you're trying to scale it out. Speaking of scaling it out, let's maybe transition a bit. I'd love to hear how this all played itself out. Now, obviously, I'd love to hear any revenue kind of stuff you can share with us, but anything, like, because this pivot was being made in 2022. We've got HCU, helpful content update that hit in 2023. We've got subsequent core updates that have gone on to hit organic traffic sites, right? And yours still to this point had organic traffic as a large traffic source, right? You were transitioning out of that in 2022 to this paid strategy we talked about in detail, but maybe you can give us some timeframes, some revenue numbers, or just how this grew and then how the organic traffic went, so we can get an idea going into the sale what things were looking like.
For sure, yeah. So kind of organic traffic wise, things were steady, if not growing. Still had that engine going, still heavily invested in that side of things. Started to dip my toe into the paid side. Basically, as I mentioned, doubling down on the keywords that already worked with the partners that were our best partners. So really kind of de-risk that as much as possible. It took probably 3 months to find something that was, both profitable and I felt had been running for long enough that, hey, this is maybe evergreen. This isn't just like a 1 month sort of situation. And so after that, though, probably you're looking at something like 3 to 5K profit, in that range. And then I started to ask myself, well, what happens if I double the budget? What if I just double the budget? Is there enough? What happens? Like, I know that at some point the diminishing marginal returns will eat at my profit, but I will also drive more conversions. And so where is that efficiency point where, it's basically supply demand economics 101, where, marginal cost equals the price or whatever. And so basically just approaching this as a, hey, let's double it to see what happens. Let's double it to see what happens. And did that a couple times. And, pretty soon I'd say like, so 6 months into this strategy, we're printing like 20K plus a month in profit, something like 60K in revenue kind of thing. And providing a ton of value to our partners. I also want to be clear about that. Like, you really start to...
They're loving life.
They're loving
right?
it. They're loving it.
They don't do anything. They sell more product.
Right. And they're like, wow, this you have more than one trick. Like, what's your other, what other tricks do you have up your sleeve? So it's a really great feeling. And also I could sleep better at night, right? I really hope this organic side continues to grow, but if it doesn't, it's okay. Like, I can still pay my employees and all that. So yeah, then the thought was, okay, great. So I have like maybe one category or one set of partners that I'm doing this with. Hey, like, let's try my second best category. Let's try and initiate that. And again, similar process. It takes some amount of months to convince folks that this is a good strategy, to test into it, make sure that the numbers work. But pretty soon now you have two. You have two kind of like even more diversified, because let's just say competition or maybe the partners themselves decide to call it quits in your one category. Now you have two. So that's kind of like the broad strokes there of how that scales up. At some point, you do reach that ceiling, right? You can't just continuously double forever and ever. At least I haven't found a category where that's true. But at some point you go, oh, okay, wait, I've spent more on ads than I've ever spent before, but my profit is less. Okay, I should probably dial it back, or figure out where the fat is in my ads. And of course, there's always more keywording that you can do. So even within your existing categories, maybe you add a new competitor to that mix if you're bidding on brand names. Maybe you describe the product in a slightly different way. Just that keyword. And maybe you relax the match types and let Google do all this experimentation for you. Maybe you try a new landing page, right? Like your landing page, and maybe you reorder the partners on the landing page. Maybe you renegotiate the commission rates with some of your partners now that you're driving so much volume to them. Like there's lots of different kind of ways to churn and optimizations to make. But once you find something that's evergreen, the very first question, at least in my mind, was like, okay, what's the ideal spend level? What's the max spend level here? And then kind of trying to optimize each little piece of that experience for the user so that they convert more.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Your affiliates must have loved you, or the companies. But let's talk about the exit, if you could. Like, where, maybe as a percentage of earnings, was it split between SEO-driven earnings and paid media earnings? I don't know why I blanked. I'm staring at paid media all over my screen right now. If you can, tell us a little bit about how the websites were affected by the HCU. And how you kind of transition into a sale, because I do think that's important to touch on, because people will ask this question. Like a lot of times when you have declining organic traffic, I'm assuming there was some declines from the HCU. I don't know what they were. But with any declines, it can be harder to kind of sell a brand and whatnot. You talked about the challenging climate there were. So if you could touch on all that, give us some perspective on what the split was like at that point, and then the challenges in selling the site given the current climate.
Yeah. So I put the site on the market kind of right before the HCU. So it was a interesting kind of time to be packaging your business and sort of changing the story a little bit. But at that point, it was kind of 60-40, I would say, maybe 60% organic, 40% paid. So still like really massive organic traffic. And then HCU came and it cut probably 30%, 40%, like really steep cut, almost overnight, right? It's just really decimated. And so then, but I had already been positioning my business when going to market as, hey, this is a diversified, both in terms of no concentration of partners, in terms of the traffic itself, in terms of where the earnings come from. It's nicely mixed. It's diversified across different sites as well. It's not just one site. So that was kind of the name of my pitch was, hey, this is not just an organic thing. There's other aspects that make this not just a niche site that's sitting on SEO. Then think about this being towards the end of the year, right? And it's also SBA financed, which means you're relying on a lot of bureaucratic steps to get this deal done that are way outside of your control. And the holidays, at the end of the year, everything grinds to a halt for everybody, but especially large bureaucracies. So it was a challenging period to be sort of like kind of courting with a buyer and reassuring the buyer that yes, 30% of the traffic did kind of like get trimmed overnight, and it's kind of starting to slide in other categories too. Like the revenue is starting to slide overall as a result of that organic traffic decline. And so to tell the narrative that okay, well at least you have this paid thing, and also organic traffic is not dead by any means. There's still ways to grow that. To invest in your own audience and your newsletter and things of that nature. So it was tricky to thread that needle, so to speak. I guess the long story short is diversifying early before you sell is the name of the game. I will say that the deal retraded once, or in other words, it went down. The price went down in light of how much. Because it was like 4 or 5 months of the whole sale. At over 4 or 5 months, the organic traffic had slid significantly. So I think, long story short is to say that the HCU definitely impacted the business. It definitely impacted the overall sale of the price of the business. But why the business is still doing well today and why it was able to exit was because of the strategy to diversify. And so if, the lesson to anyone listening is paid media arbitrage can be a great place to start. It's very lucrative. And in many ways, it's easier. It depends on your skill set and your orientation, but it's easier in many ways than, say, building an owned audience. But, for the folks who are already kind of entrenched in their niche in their business, I'd say figuring out a paid media strategy is just really smart, really smart strategy, because you're, again, aligning your incentives with the platforms and therefore future-proofing your business in a way that is just not true with organic. So yeah, I'd say kind of regardless where you're at with your business, when you're just starting, somewhere in between, thinking about selling, thinking about how to diversify with paid, or at least layer that on is really, really smart. It was really important in the exiting of my business.
What kind of traffic and revenue was the business generating when you sold it?
Yeah, organic traffic I think was probably in the 30,000 a month kind of range, 50,000 a month. You can think about, I think of the queries being really specific though. So not a lot of display ad kind of monetized information content, very, very conversion focused content. So small number, but highly lucrative. And then on the revenue side, we were at a little over $1 million run rate. So in revenue wise, and just given I guess, as you paid more for ads, or as the business skewed more towards paid media rather than organic, the overall margin decreased because you're paying for ads rather than just getting the traffic, or paying for traffic rather than just getting it for free. But still really, really healthy profit margin there as well.
That's great. Yeah, that's a wonderful. I mean, like you said, I mean, a $1 million per year run rate for your annual revenue. There are margins that are a little bit different than maybe your classic site that was just earning money from SEO, but you still had quite a healthy EBITDA. So very well done. Alex, this is pretty inspiring, I think, for a lot of people listening, just because a lot of people didn't get into paid media before Google has changed the SEO traffic game, but there's still all the reason in the world why someone could get into it now. So for people listening who are generating a lot of traffic from, say, SEO or social media, you just outlined a great strategy to diversify. And for people who aren't getting as much as they used to, you can still diversify, even though you didn't do it ahead of the curve in this case. But it's a great story no matter which side of the coin you land on for this. Where can people follow along with what you have going on? I know that you have more as it relates to this paid media strategy.
Yeah, appreciate you teeing that up. For anyone interested in this strategy, learning more, I'm actually launching a course this week. You can go check it out. It's called paidmediaaffiliates.com. And it goes even more in depth than this podcast, I promise you, with visuals and a community. And ultimately, if this is interesting to you, I think that's a great place to delve deeper. You can take the course. And ultimately, if this is a strategy that you're interested in but don't want to take on yourself, you should reach out to me, and I'm happy to chat with you about it, and kind of determine if this is the right path for you. You can find me on LinkedIn, probably the best place. Email as well is great. It's contact@paidmediaaffiliates.com. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It's been I've been a huge fan of the pod for a long time. Been inspired by so many other people's stories, and I also just wanted to say your own stories. So Jared and Spencer, you guys are some of the most nimble marketers I know. You are not just SEOs. You're not just affiliates. You really do roll with the punches, and I think that's part of my story as well, right? Is sort of not being satisfied with just your current game. Always be looking for the future games. To future-proof your business, understanding how fast the online landscape moves. So hats off to you guys for kind of showing us the way there for so many years.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll take that compliment. I think you summed up perfectly not only what this entire hour has been about, but really what this podcast is about knowing that the online world is fickle, and success is something to continually build on and not rest on your laurels, right? Alex, it's been great. That hour flew by. I was joking when I said it, but I mean, I love getting into the weeds. I love when we have super detailed podcast episodes like this. So thanks for going deep with us on that. So, hey, congratulations again. And until we talk to you next time, all the best.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jared. Talk to you soon.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I just wanted to remind you that if you are ready to start building smarter, faster, and easier internal links, you should check out Link Whisper. You can get $15 off Link Whisper when you use the coupon code PODCAST at checkout. Head over to linkwhisper.com and use the code PODCAST in order to save $15. Thanks again for listening.